Hello and welcome to The Future is Spoken, produced by the Digital Assistant Academy. This show accompanies the Digital Assistant Academy's course entitled Voice Interaction Design. How did AI conversational platforms evolve? And how user-friendly are they? We've all had the experience of going to our smartphone to do something, scrolling through apps, and then forgetting what we were doing. Roger Kibbe wants to change this. He aims to make conversational technology way more accessible so that people enjoy using it and do what they set out to do.
So today we have Roger Kibbe with us. Thank you so much, Roger, for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a developer evangelist for Viv Labs. I'm sure we'll talk more about Viv Labs in this conversation, but really what I do is I work with developers, designers, executives, and think about conversational AI and voice, not only about the strategy, but actually building an experience. And I spend my time both in the technology side and the marketing side and talking to people all about building interesting and exciting new experiences with voice and conversational AI. Before joining Viv, I founded my own voice consulting startup, worked there for a bit, and then worked for almost a year and a half. Actually, in 2017, I got started with voice. I actually left my corporate job to found a voice startup. And this was all about our idea is WordPress for voice, so making it super easy for a small or medium company to get started and establish a voice presence. And before that, for many years, I worked for Gap Inc. in retail technology strategy, both as an enterprise architect and really driving that later omni-channel technology strategy and think about the customer experience across stores and the web and an app and making that as seamless as possible. And then way back when I did my kind of rounds, a big consulting firm, and then worked for a small startup consulting firm as well. And let's see, I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley. If there's any Cal Bears out there, I'll say go Bears. And that's a brief history of me.
Wow, that is really impressive. You have covered a lot of things in your career, which is interesting, working with small companies, consulting, doing your own kind of thing. It's really interesting. So what got you into the conversation design space?
Yeah, great question. When I think about technology, I love technology, but I also have some beefs with technology. And I think we've all gone to our phone and opened it up to find some information. And then you check your Instagram, you check your Twitter, and 20, 30 minutes later, you didn't remember why you started using your phone. So I love the fact that technology empowers and enables us, but also can be a time sink, suck us in. And so I thought, both personally and professionally, throughout my career, about, hey, I really want to find a tech that empowers and enables people, but then gets out of the way. And I didn't realize it at first with the voice. I got an Echo Dot way back or an Echo device way back, and I guess it was 2015, and played around with it. And the more I played with it, I was like, hey, wait a second, this is really groundbreaking for what I've been talking about for so many years, because it lets me get something done, and then it gets out of the way. And then when I need it again, I ask for it. But it's something that what it was really attracted to me, funny enough, as a technologist, is that it faded in the background and got out of the way. So much so, I got so excited about that, as I like to say, I left my kind of big, cushy corporate job in 2017 to go found a voice startup and worked on that and in voice consulting. And now I work for Viv Labs, and the rest is history. But I'm just super, super excited about this industry. It's an overused metaphor to say we're in the first inning of a 9-inning game, but maybe we're in the second inning of a doubleheader now. To use that baseball analogy, I think there's so much more to come. And it's such an exciting and dynamic place to be working. I'm just excited and thrilled every day to be working in the voice and conversational AI industry.
Absolutely, yeah. So I keep talking about this. Like many years back, phone was not even a thing. Like smartphones or mobile applications were not even a thing. I still remember designing my first mobile application in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
2008, sometime around that time frame. And then at that moment, even websites were not even a thing. Not every business used to have a website, but soon now everyone has a website. We are so dependent on mobile phones. So for me, I feel the future generation, especially my kid, he started speaking or using voice when he was 2. Like really seeing the microphone, he thought, yes, I can speak to it. So I feel like the future generation would definitely be more keener to use it. And for us, this is maybe a flexibility or a choice that, okay, we want to use voice application. For them, it will become a necessity. They would want to use it. They'll be so dependent on it because the technologies are evolving. This is great that you found the interest early on about the voice technology and conversational AI. So could you tell us a little bit more about the Viv AI and what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. Just a comment though on what you're talking about kids. So I have 15, almost 16 very soon, 16 and 14-year-old daughters, we'll say. And I call them the touch generation because they were raised around touch and they expect every device to be touch enabled. But you take this younger generation and I'm going to call them the voice generation, and they're going to expect everything to be voice enabled. So I love the fact that kids push technology forward because they have set expectations that sometimes us as adults don't realize should be there. So yes, kudos to the next generation. Push, and make us build more, even better and more amazing voice experiences. So you ask about Viv. Let me answer that in kind of 2 parts. I want to tell you a little bit about the history of Viv because I think that's pretty interesting, and then tell you a little bit more about what we're doing right now today. So the history of Viv. So Viv was founded by a group that included Adam Shire and Dag Kitlaw. And Adam and Dag actually invented Siri. So way back when, they had this idea about conversational AI and voice and founded this small startup, Siri, found some success. And Adam has this great story about when Steve Jobs called and said, hey, I want to buy you guys. And eventually that happened. And Siri was built into the iPhone. And I think for many of us, it was our first kind of voice experience. Both of them worked for Apple for a couple of years and then felt that Apple really wasn't moving as fast as it could from moving voice technology and the experience forward. So they left and founded Viv Labs with the whole idea being, hey, this will be a second generation of conversational AI, a second generation conversational AI platform. So founded Viv Labs, grew it, and then sold Viv Labs to Samsung about 3 years ago. And the whole idea Samsung had is, hey, we're the world's biggest device manufacturers across phones and televisions and appliances, et cetera. But we want to embed AI capabilities into our products to make it easier for them to use. So that's the broad history. A little bit about what we're doing right now. Really, or a little bit, let me back up a little bit, talk about one of the ways that the Viv engine and Bixby is a little bit different than some of the other voice platforms is it really uses AI in the design and development process. So what's a challenge right now with any development is you spend a lot of time, and I'll call the plumbing, the common code that every application needs. And what you do with our platform is you model that. And so it actually auto-generates the code for you to do that. And so what it really lets you do is focus the value add. And what I mean that is the code that makes your experience you're building or designing unique and different from any other experience. I will say that multimodal is a big focus. So Samsung, every device that we ship with Bixby enabled has a screen. So then you start thinking about, which is a really interesting design paradigm and really interesting to think about, hey, how do I build a voice experience with a screen? What should I do with voice? What should I do with a screen? And how really do I mix those two modalities together to build the best experience for a user? The other focus we have is on additional devices, and that makes sense as Samsung is on phones now. You can start building for a smartwatch like this. You can start building for smart appliances. And my favorite, which you can build for right now, but there isn't a marketplace for end users quite yet, which is the TV, because I get super excited about the TV and making it interactive there. That is a little overview of what Viv is, a little history, and what we focus on right now.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'm really impressed with how, actually speaking, in 2011, City came. And that's when people actually learned about voice technologies. Although before that, there were a couple of attempts, and we really wanted to have voice-enabled technologies. And that's why we saw some of those in the sci-fi movies as well. I really feel it's good that we are pushing the boundaries, we are realizing, and it's not just that these voice devices are limited to your home. Now they are everywhere, right? Like in the car, or even in kiosks or public places, hotels, hospitals, and all of these places as well. And it's really interesting to see what Samsung is doing, especially with the appliances or television and all of those kind of things. Do you feel like, depending on these devices or depending on the platform, the use cases vary for these? Because, for example, Alexa, right? It does everything at home. So you can schedule your appointments, or you can set reminders, or you can play music and all sorts of things. Do you expect a refrigerator to do the same things, or do you expect the use cases for a refrigerator to be different?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And can I toot a talk I'm giving next month in October at Voice Summit called Beyond the Smart Speaker, Building for New Devices. So I'm talking about exactly that. So I've been thinking a lot about that very topic. I think there's commonalities, but then there's differences. And I think you need to think about, for instance, smart speakers are 85% of the market is screenless, right? So it's a voice-only experience. And then you get somewhere around 15% with a screen. Mm-hmm. That's really different, for instance, than a voice experience on a phone, which definitely has a screen. And so you need to take that into consideration. Or like this watch, so that has a screen, but it has a small, like 1-inch screen. Compare that to a TV that might have a 50-inch screen. So I think you need to think about, if voice is, as an interface, is a common ground among these different devices, that's true. But are they multimodal or not? Do they have a screen or not? Is it a screen that you're definitely looking at? For instance, a TV you're probably looking at. My watch, my phone, my watch, I may not be looking at and I ask it something. My phone may be in my desk and I can't see it. You need to think about that. I also think you need to think about the context in which you're using these devices. I use a watch or a phone or in a car. I'm mobile, I'm out and about. The experience when I'm out and mobile might be quite different than the experience that I want, say, sitting at my desk at home, and let's say my voice enabled on my laptop. And then I want a different experience versus I'm sitting with the family in front of the TV, and I might want a completely different experience. So I think it's definitely the device capabilities that you should take into consideration, but also, and really important, is the context in which you're using the device, where you're using it, how you're using it. Is it a one-on-one interaction? Can other people listen to what's happening? Jan Koenig of Jovo called this context first in a recent little blog post he made. And I absolutely love that because I think the industry needs to think about context. And I think the next step is thinking about, hey, I want to get things done, but the things I want to get done on my car versus walking down the street versus at my desk versus in front of the TV may be different, or the way I want to get the same thing done may be different. So think about the context and the user and take that into account when building an experience.
That is amazing. I keep pushing for like context-driven design as well, because I feel like knowing your context changes so much. Because I would not be comfortable giving away my social security number in a public place or my payment details. Not even that, like even when I'm home, maybe I'm not very comfortable like asking Alexa to read my voice notes if someone else is there or things like that. So definitely context is important for sure. Now, how about inclusivity? Like when we talk about each of these things, I see if you look at smart speakers, for example, they are just screens. They are not multimodal like you were talking about. They do not enable everyone. They enable a certain set of people for sure. But if you look at multimodality, it does open up for inclusivity because now you have alternate modalities. So if someone is not able to see, they can hear, or someone not able to hear can see. So those kind of things. So where do you think inclusivity is in all of this, and what is Viv AI doing to enable inclusivity?
So excellent question. So I'm just a huge fan of technology enabling inclusiveness, both when it's intended to and sometimes it's not intended to. One of the things I don't think that people who first built voice experiences realized is what an unlock it was for deaf people. And I have heard over and over again in early days of voice that the first users who really got into using voice skills or actions or et cetera were the deaf. And that wasn't it wasn't intentionally built for deaf people, but it unlocked inclusiveness. And then you think about staying along those lines in the world, the number of people who can't read but can talk is massive. I think it's in the billions. And so to date, with traditional UIs, typing, swiping, it's all relied on the ability to read. But now if I can talk to a device, it really builds that inclusiveness to that whole group of people who, yes, they can't read, but they certainly can communicate well and they can start using technology. And I think that empowers and enables them. So yeah, or a screen enabling something, maybe someone is hard of hearing. And so voice isn't the best modality for them. And so it's screen first. I love one of the goals. I said that voice should empower and enable. And I would definitely say empower and enable inclusiveness in there. Now, let me just, not just voice, technology should empower and enable. And when it empowers and enables us to be more inclusive and expand the number of people who can experience this technology and benefit from it, it makes the world a better place. And what greater goal could you have than to make the world a better place? So I love the fact of using different technologies and modalities for inclusiveness. And then you mentioned AI, and just as AI gets better and understands us better and can predict what we're doing, it's going to make it easier for all of us. And I think also drive some inclusiveness there. So yeah, you got me a little bit on my hobby horse because it's something I feel so passionate about. And definitely something where I feel it's so motivational. It's so exciting when you hear about a group of people for whatever reason that were locked out of A, technology B comes along and empowers them and enables them to enjoy that, the fruits of that technology. Great stuff.
Of course, yeah. I am very passionate about accessibility and inclusive design, and I try to do that as much as possible, talking to people of different age groups and abilities to know what is possible, what is not. And I feel, although we talk about inclusivity a lot, the industry is still not there when it comes to like designing inclusive experiences or applications. I still remember basic things in the technology like adding alt tags or the header tags and all of those things. They're like, okay, we will do it because it is an American like accessibility standards or something. So unless we push the standards or something along those lines, people are not proactively thinking about inclusivity. So what's your take on that? Do you think the industry would at some point start thinking as conversational design becomes more prominent or more being used?
Yeah. So interesting analogy back to the web development days, because I have lots of web development background, and using alt tags or making sure that your site works for a screen reader was something that in a lot of ways, you're absolutely right. It was both a combination of kind of regulatory requirements and frankly, sometimes lawsuits that prompted people to go do it. Boy, tough question. I would love to say that the industry is going to do it themselves. On the other hand, I'm not naive. And I do think that we sometimes need to mandate things. Either there's regulatory things that need to be done, or there's financial reasons, avoiding lawsuits that force people to include inclusivity in it. I think we'd all like to say that we build this stuff from the beginning. And I think a lot of us try and do our best. And yet I also do believe I do not have any, obvious physical ailments myself. I can hear, I can see, I can touch, and things that are. I just don't think about things that perhaps if a deaf person or a hearing impaired person would think about when I'm building something. And I think it's really hard to do. So I would say I am in favor of some kind of regulatory framework or sometimes a pressure to force all of us to think about it and learn about how we can build in often very simple things. Your web examples, a lot of that stuff is really simple to add, but you just don't think about adding it. But if you're required to add it, then it becomes a pattern and a habit and a natural part of what you do. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Another thing is, even when we design, we don't think about like accessible, like disabled people as our personas. Our primary personas are never that, for sure. So I feel like, yeah, like having some sort of standards would definitely help. So as we start looking at conversational AI technologies, a lot has changed, and Amazon and Google also is aggressively pushing to do new things. Like Alexa recently launched the turn-taking capabilities and stuff like that as well. So where do you think conversational AI will head, or where it is heading in like next few years?
Yeah. At the risk of sounding like a broken record to talk about many devices again, I think that's one place where it's going to start showing up in many more devices. With the whole idea being this ambient computing future, where I can walk into my home, I can walk into my office, I can walk in my car, I can talk, and I can get something done. And I don't really care what device listened to me. It just happened for me. So I do think the plethora of devices that we have and are starting to voice enable will unlock that ambient future. I think it's going to take a while to get there, but I'm excited about all these devices that are voice enabled. Sometimes I hear about it, I'm like, that seems a little bit crazy, but I always say you got to go crazy to innovate. And sometimes what's crazy today is mainstream tomorrow. So I think that's one direction that is definitely happening, and I'm really excited about it. The other thing is getting just smarter. I think what we do with voice assistants today is we bark simple commands at them, and it does something for you, and it's often like a one-turn conversation. But unlocking multi-turn conversations where you can get something more interesting done is a big unlock. this is going to require several things. It's going to require AI to get smarter, to understand context. We all as humans, I can mention something we talked about 10 minutes ago, and you'll instantly understand the context and what I was talking about. I think voice assistants and the AI behind them have there's a lot of work to get there, but I think it'll be a huge unlock. I mentioned Adam Shire was the co-founder of Viv Labs, and he likes to talk about really an AI assistant should be as smart as if you had a human assistant. And if you think about the parallels there, a human assistant, you can ask them to do something, they'll get something done, and they ask you just enough questions in order to get it done, but they know your preferences, they know what you like, they know when they need to ask you a question, when the conversation is needed or not. I would love to see that happen. I think we're starting to see that. So certainly I'll have to mention some Bixby things around context and maintaining rich things there. I love what Alexa is doing, Alexa conversations. I know Google is moving forward with this. I think the industry is really aware that we got to get smarter devices that we can actually have, I'll call it a conversation with, not bark a command at. So I think we're at the infancy there. I think we're going to stumble and some things will break along the way, but we're starting to get devices that are smarter and understand context and understand maybe multi-turn conversations better. And that's pretty exciting. And that's right. I call it the putting the capital A, making an assistant have a capital A. So it really gets things done.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I like calling these assistants, they are more transactional. They're like conversational. And so you feel these assistants will be conversational at some point, and we'll start to see patterns there as well, which is really nice. That brings another question. Like we talk about context, or we talk about like remembering your preferences and all. So privacy has been questioned so many times. People have concerns. Like some people will be there, what do I have to hide? My life is an open book, but others do have a lot of concerns about privacy. Will these conversational AIs have some level of preferences for the user to decide how much they want to give, or do you feel like the control will be more on the conversational AI side?
Boy, the future of privacy. I don't know. My crystal ball I'll pull out. I'll express where my opinion is. Yeah, it's an interesting and conflicting to say, I want contextual understanding in conversational AI, and I want privacy. And I mean conflicting because contextual understanding and really understands my preferences and what I like to do and what my behavior has been in the past, and then makes inferences about what I'd like to do in the future. And obviously that requires me to give up some fair amount of privacy. I think we're going to have a lot of conversations around privacy and what it means and what it practically means. And when I say practical, what does it mean to the end user to do that? I think when you're in the industry, we sometimes think about privacy and we get very complicated in our thinking about it. And imagine this incredibly complicated system to manage privacy. And that probably is from a utopian ultimate vision of I can exactly manage what application or what voice experience gets what information, but is an end user ever really going to use that? They're not going to. So what's a pragmatic way where an end user starts accepting things and understanding what they mean? We've seen mobile go through this. And where we landed up with mobile is you launch an application and ask you a bunch of questions about, do you have permissions and can I do this? And I think voice right now largely has mimicked that. If you're on Alexa, Google, or Bixby, they all do something really similar. If I need location access, it pops up and says that. I think that's great. And it's not a bad idea to follow past paradigms. But deeper understanding of myself and what I like to do is probably a deeper level of potential privacy intrusion than I may be comfortable with. I don't know, because I can think of this as a technologist, I can think of this amazing thing where you like have all these knobs and dials and let exactly this site, this experience knows this and this one knows this. And yet I know as a consumer, as an end user, there's just no way. I'm just going to click yes and want to make it easy. I guess the question I have, and I'm thinking of this on my feet right now, is, okay, can we focus AI on technology and empower the user to make tech choices about their privacy, but make it easy through AI? I just thought of that as we're talking. I don't know what that all means, but if AI is going to enable us to be more intuitive to use something, maybe it can make privacy controls more intuitive. Because right now it's a bunch of legalese on the screen and I click accept.
Yeah.
And that's not really intuitive. That's just really covering legally whoever developed the application. It's not really an end user focused solution.
Absolutely.
I don't have a great answer other than we got a lot of work to do there.
For sure, yeah. And my focus is on humanizing privacy for sure. That is something I do believe that people don't read terms and conditions, and putting everything under the carpet of legal and consents does not really make sense, because users in the end really don't know what's happening. And I believe AI should be more ethical and transparent with the users about these things, and that's where like humanizing privacy comes into play for sure. So
I love the term humanizing privacy. Great.
Oh, by the way, I'm writing a book about it.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to reading it, because that's the best way to put it. We need to humanize privacy.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that is where we can create a cohesive experience. Especially, I like your vision of how like users don't care who they are talking to. They just want to talk to the voice assistant and get things done. And it could be an omni-channel experience, and they'll be going from one place to the other place, like from their car to their home to their office. And there are multiple assistants which are interconnected, data sharing, handing off, and all whatnot. So I definitely feel like that is going to be the future, like you mentioned. One last question I have, we are approaching our time here, is we spoke about Viv Labs and conversational platform. So is your platform something people can use third-party to create third-party apps, like how Alexa Skill Kit or Dialogflow, or is it specific to just the Bixby?
Yeah, no. So it is, well, it's specific to Bixby and tens or hundreds of millions of devices that run Bixby. But yeah, no, it's if you go to bixbydevelopers.com right now, you can download the Bixby Studio, and you can go and build a voice application and a multimodal application too, because of the rich UI library there. But yeah, it's a full-blown development environment akin to Alexa's Ask or Google. Google has recently introduced new tools, right? It was Dialogflow, and now they started migrating away from that. So I can't remember the name of their new tools. But yeah, it's the same idea. Is you go and build a voice experience, and then you can deploy it on all those devices that support that technology. And we call them capsules. Alexa calls them skills. Google calls them actions. The industry will one day coalesce.
We need to standardize those.
Common terminology, but not there yet. That's indicative of the early days, I'd say, of when there's a lot of this terminology confusion. But yeah, absolutely, you can go and do that today. And my job is to help people build those experiences. I'd love anyone listening, you want to go build a Bixby capsule, go build it. My job is to help you build it. And then I'd absolutely love to see what you build and try it out. I love seeing things that people build and the creativity that goes into them. That's one of the most exciting aspects of my job. is to try something new and think, wow, I never thought about that. What a really cool, amazing experience. I love it.
Thank you so much. I will make sure that we add that into our show notes as well. So whoever is listening, they can just click on the link and go through it. So thank you so much, Roger, for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a true pleasure as well. You and I see like a lot of things you can do with voice, a lot of the common challenges, but also common opportunities. So this has been a lot of fun talking today.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening today. Remember, you can find all the information on how to become a certified voice interaction designer, along with show notes and more, at our website, digitalassistant.academy. That's digitalassistant.academy. We encourage your feedback and questions, so be sure to get in touch by using the contact page at the Digital Assistant Academy's website. We'll include the link in the show notes. In our next episode, Dr. Terry Fisher, physician and host with Voice Den, will discuss voice-first use cases for healthcare.